Welcome to News Inside. I'm An Jung-hyun. Let's meet our panelists. Professor Shin Sang-hyuk from Kyung University Graduate School of International Studies is back with us. And Dr. Bong Young-sik from the Asan Institute for Policy Studies is with us as well. Korea's Constitutional Court recently upheld an anti-graft law banning civil servants and individuals in a number of other fields from receiving gifts that exceed certain price ranges. The so-called Kimyongnan Act is scheduled to go into effect on September 28th. We look at what to expect from this new law and why it's still stirring up controversy.
Korea's Constitutional Court last week ruled in favor of an anti-graft law that aims to curb bribery and corruption among civil servants, as well as private school teachers and journalists. The legislation had raised concerns about excessive control through legislation and curbing the freedom of the press, but the country's highest court said the infringement of personal interest does not outweigh public benefits. In essence, it placed greater emphasis on fairness within public procedures and decision-making.
부패를 근원적으로 없애고 공정한 사회를 만들기 위해서는 공직자뿐만 아니라 공공부문 중요한 역할을 하는 공공부문 종사자들이 청렴성도 요구되기 때문에 이 법의 취지는 타당하고.
The Anti-Corruption Law is also known as the Kimyonglan Act, named after the person who first proposed it back in 2012 as then chair of the country's Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission. The bill at the time called for punishment of those who receive excessive gifts, even if they are not directly in exchange for favors. The bill was passed into law last year in March by the National Assembly with 226 out of the 247 attending lawmakers voting in favor. It was then proclaimed in the same month on the 27th. The ordinance to implement the Kimyonglan Act was made public in May, outlining the specifics on what acts are considered bribery and excessive gifting. It encompasses not only public servants, journalists, and private school teachers, but also their spouses. This anti-graft law is set to take effect on September 28th, and hopes for a greater transparency in Korean society will remain high.
So the ruling to uphold this anti-graft law caused a lot of debate. What were your thoughts on the outcome?
I think this is a first necessary step toward changing Korea's corruption-friendly culture. I think in this context, it's very needed decision. But as you know very well, what I worry about is the details of the law should be reconsidered because I think preparation for enactment of this law is not well finished.
Mm-hmm. We'll get to the details in just a bit. Dr. Bong, what were your thoughts?
I agree that this reflects a strong resolve of the government to fundamentally tackle the issue of corruption in the Korean society. And at the personal level, that I regret that while watching the news about the Constitutional Court upholding the decision, I was wondering why I didn't have to worry about it because I'd never been in an influential position to receive expensive gifts. Nobody gave me expensive gifts, so I was wondering why I'm exception to this change.
Made you a little bitter.
Right.
Well, setting aside voices of opposition from politicians and other interest groups, what do you think is the significance of putting this law into effect?
Well, as I explained before, I think this is a kind of first step toward changing the Korea's corruption-friendly culture. But there must be much rooms of modification in order to achieve the purpose effectively. This law stipulates the public officials and journalists, even private school faculty, who are treated to meals. The maximum amount of money which is allowed by the law is 30,000 won, and the money for the gifts was set at the 50,000 won, and for the money for congratulations and condolences, the limit to the 100,000 won. Yes, it's good, but as you know very well, there are pros and cons about the amount of money for these activities because this amount of money was actually firstly discussed about 10 years ago. Exactly speaking, it was done in 2003. So the person who asked the change of this law is, well, the amount of money was decided a long time ago, so we have to, the government should reflect the inflations over the last 10 years. That means that if I quote the amount of money suggested by the floor leader of the opposition party, the money for the meals should be increased up to 50,000 won, and the money for the gifts should be increased up to 100,000 won. I think it seems to be more reasonable, I think, personally.
Well, there have long been calls within Korea to transform the culture of currying favors with others through expensive gifts and meals. And now all that remains is the final implementation of this law. So how does the public feel about it? We talked to some people on the street.
A recent survey on 144 lawmakers from the 20th National Assembly shows that nearly half believe the anti-graft Kim Young-lan Act should first be implemented and changes made later if necessary. This is while 40% said it needs to be amended before it's put into practice. In May, after the ordinance to implement the Kim Young-lan Act was pre-announced, most members of the public also had a positive reaction, with 66% of those surveyed saying it was a good decision. Here's what some of them had to say.
우선적으로는 잘된 일이지만 보완해야 될 부분이 되게 많다고 생각은 해요. 국회의원이 제일 많이 적용이 돼야 되는데 국회의원들이 가장 빠져나갈 수 있는 구멍이 많다고 생각을 하기 때문에 그게 가장 큰 문제점이라고 생각을 해요.
지금은 되게 빠져나갈 수 있는 구멍들이 많은데 예를 들면은 3만 원씩 그러니까 그 한도 내 금액으로 여러 번 나눠서 결제하거나 이런 게 많은데 이런 부분들을 좀 더 보완해서 하면은 더 나은 방향으로 갈 수 있다고 생각해요.
잘 되긴 했는데 그냥 신문지상에서 보면 좀 보완이 필요한 것 같다는 생각이 들어요. 주변에서 뭐 농어촌 어민들이 뭐 그런 신문 기사들 많이 있잖아요. 좀 타격이 있을 거다라고 하는데 사실 그게 얼마나 있을지 모르겠지만 그런 부분도 좀 보완이 돼야 될 것 같다는 생각이 들어요.
이거는 시간은 되게 많이 걸릴 거예요. 그렇지만은 한번 좀 근본적인 부패 척결이라든지 이런 면에 있어서 힘들더라도 다 같이 한번 해봐야 될 부분이라고 생각합니다. 한국 사회가 한 단계 업그레이드 되기 위해서는 꼭 필요한 법이라고 생각합니다.
Once the law goes into effect, anywhere from 4 to 5 million people will fall under its scope. That's just shy of 1/10 of Korea's total population. Now, the question is how to draw the line between who's affected and who is not. Do you think there are some gray areas here?
Definitely. I guess the Constitutional Court's decision is aimed at implementing the law and iron out the gray areas later on, based upon the lessons learned from the actual application of the law and the social responses to the law.
So implement first and revise later.
Right. And by the time I may be one of those, how many? 5 million
4 to 5
Koreans
million.
affected by this law. And the fair implementation has two parts. One is the application, who will be affected, who will be subject to this anti-graft law, and the equity, whether the law will be applied on the equal basis. And it is a very difficult subject because, first of all, the subjects of the anti-graft law include, as Professor Shin mentioned, the journalists and the teachers, even in private schools, who are not really representative public servants. And interesting point is that the members of the National Assembly are, by and large, accepted. So who are closer to our, casual and commonsensical definition of the public servant, then the purpose of anti-graft law may be subject to the controversy. But the Constitutional Court's ruling is that people who engage in teaching and journalism carry as much social influence as the core member of the government. So they have to be included as a subject of this law. So we have to wait and see. The Constitutional Court's definition of the subjects are by and large based upon the UN Anti-Corruption Convention that South Korea is one of the signatory countries. And as a very interesting dimension of the Korean culture, spouses of those public servants are also will be affected by this Kim Young-lan or anti-graft law. And it is controversial whether application of this law to spouses will be in conflict with the Relations Act barred in the Korean Constitution. In the past, when your relatives or family members are related to the crimes, then you are also affected by the law. But this has been ruled as unconstitutional. But the inclusion of the spouses of public servants in the anti-graft law has an element that might be in conflict with the ruling that defines the Relations Act as unconstitutional. So we have to wait and see.
In fact, the purpose of this law is to eliminate corruption in the public sector. And then this law says clearly that this anti-corruption message could be spread to other part of the society. This is the logic of the original purpose of this law. But as Dr. Bong pointed out very well, when you look at the target groups, it's quite confusing, isn't it? So I think the government should make it clear their stance about defining target groups of this law. I think it should be done.
Yes, and despite all the good intentions behind it, there are concerns also over the possibility of extreme or excessive prosecution and the possibility of the law being misused or abused by law enforcement. How do we make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, definitely there is a great deal of concern for that, and expensive and aggressive prosecution has been one of the major concerns in the Korean society, especially Korean society made a democratic transition in mid-1980s. So stern observation and the reinforcement of law is very important on one hand, but at the same time protection of basic human rights from potential abusive application of law on the other hand is also very important for healthy functioning of democratic society. But we still in a very early stage to see what kind of effect that this new anti-graft law will actually make in near future. So we have no other choice but to just wait and see what kind of cases that we are going to experience individually and collectively as a member of the Korean society, and what kind of changes and the modification will be definitely in need. But the concern is that, as Professor Shin mentioned, the categories 5, 3, 5, 10, if those categories are not really realistic in the contemporary social atmosphere, then there will be some innocent violators. Then what kind of actions will be taken by the prosecutor's office? Will the office only reinforce the law absolutely by the letter of law, or will it consider the general social atmosphere or customs? It's a very delicate question.
Meanwhile, people in the business sector are worried that this will put a dent in consumer sentiment. It will also have an effect on the services sector. Farmers are asking for an exemption, at least during the major traditional holidays when their prized products become popular gift items. Should we worry about the effect this law could have on the economy?
Yes, we do. I think even Madam President emphasized the special consideration for the involving industries. Well, according to the analysis done by a business sector in Korea, restaurant industries will have about 9 trillion won damage per year, and the golf industry will have about 1 trillion damage. Considering current economic situation we are facing, definitely it can be a kind of threat to the Korean economy. We are making every effort to overcome the economic difficulties. In the middle of those kind of economic difficulties, if consumption patterns are shrinked, it can be a kind of fatal blow on the Korean economy. So definitely, the original purpose of this law is very good, but we have to make some special consideration about involving industries. We have to minimize the so-called damages which would given on these industries should be minimized to do that, the government makes some special efforts. Otherwise, it will be a kind of the extra burdensome on the Korean economy.
I think in other countries, it'd be hard to find laws that specifically place restrictions on journalists or
Right.
private school teachers. So in light of this, there are some people who argue that Korea should perhaps think about adopting institutionalized lobbying, as is the case in the US. Do you think that's a feasible option?
That's one of the feasible options, but considering that Korean people are extremely smart and creative people, then if there be a new lobbying system, then there might be also some tweaks for the users to get around the legal system for disproportional benefits. It is very interesting that installing a lobbying system has been proposed at least 3 times at the National Assembly, and 2 times it was initiated by the member of the Conservative Party, and 1 time it was initiated by the opposition party and the NGO group. So there is a bipartisan and inside and outside the government consensus that the current system is not really perfect. There should be something more transparent, more effective in terms of correctly reflecting the overall and balanced opinions of the society for better implementation and execution of the law by the administrative body of the government. But at the same time, lobbying is a very great area, even in the United States, with its lobby law in 1995. So it's not really a matter of setting the letter of the lobbying law correctly, but it's how you are going to practice the system fairly and squarely. So it's it should be coupled with the general improvement and the change of the bottom-up public sentiment and the business culture. The reason why the anti-corruption law has been strengthened and enforced in the major economies, including European countries and United States, is that there has been a very strong consensus, not only among the corporations, but also general citizens, that bribery and the corruptions are antithetical to good business. So not only it hurts the public interest, but interest of the corporations themselves.
Right.
Unless we have that kind of consensus in place in Korean economy and society, then just a simple installation of the lobby law, creating the lobbyist groups, which are almost 11,000 registered lobbyist groups in the United States, will be just a very superficial first step.
So we have less than 2 months left until the Kim Young-lan Act takes effect, but there are still calls to amend the law or at least ease some of the ordinances. What are some issues that need to be dealt with now?
As we discussed already, certainly the amount, money amount for the meals and for the gifts should be reconsidered. I think, as I explained already, the amount was set about 10 years ago, so it should reflect the current, the inflations of the prices. So it should be reconsidered. And second one is the more consideration should be made to define the target groups. As we discussed before, the private school faculty was, or journalists included very rashly by the National Assembly at the final stage of the enactment. And then considering the purposes of this law, the journalists and then private school teachers and faculty should be included. I doubt about it. So it should be reconsidered. And lastly, I think as we discussed very briefly, there are several involving industries which would expect to get huge damages. So what kind of policies the government should take for these involving industries, particularly livestock industry and restaurant industries? Those industries should be one of the backbone industries, in the current Korean economy. So the government should make some special treatments or measures for these involving industries, I think.
I have 2 concerns, although I still believe that I won't be affected by this law at all in the future. But one thing is that when you take away the money politics or bribery, then the ironical possible outcome is that school ties or personal ties, if your parents sending your children to the same exclusive private schools, that may be more influential and important.
Yeah, and you
in
don't
doing
need money
business.
to maintain
Right,
school
you
friends.
cannot change the power of the personal ties. Then there is a more serious problem. Only the elitist group will benefit from the law. And second point is that the law somehow enlarged the influence of the public sector into private sector. For instance, the price of the public lecture is set under $500 per hour by this law. Then what do you think of the very popular, famous, worthwhile speaker to be treated fairly? I mean, how can you expect the government single-handedly decide the worth of the public speech by a variety of the speakers? So you have to be really flexible and creativity in order to have a widely acceptable standard of fairness under this law.
We'll see. We'll wait and see what happens. Turning our attention now to North Korea, a number of developments have been in the news. While Pyongyang continues to play provocateur, we're also getting steady reports of defections across the border. Take a look.
Korea's online shopping mall Interpark suffered a data breach, losing the personal information of 10 million of its clients in a hack attack. In exchange for the information mounting to some 20 million pieces of data, including names, phone numbers, and addresses, the hackers demanded roughly $2.7 million in bitcoins as ransom. After conducting an investigation, police announced North Korean agents were behind the attacks. An investigation by prosecutors also showed Pyongyang attempted to hack into personal accounts of some 90 public officials and experts working at foreign affairs and security offices. While the North has stepped up provocations on the cyber front, internally it has seen a greater number of people escape the country. Back in April, just over a dozen North Korean restaurant workers in China escaped and arrived in South Korea. Following this, other North Korean workers dispatched overseas also escaped. The number of North Korean defectors who have resettled in the South this year as of June has reached 749, leading some to believe Kim Jong-un's leadership is losing its stability.
북한 체제에 대한 불만, 또 국제사회의 제재, 그리고 북한 경제 상황 등 여러 가지 상황이 복합적으로 작용한 것이 아닐까 생각합니다.
As a growing number of people from the middle class and upper echelons of society look to escape the country, Pyongyang has tightened security. We look at the recent developments in the north and what they mean.
So once again, North Korea is suspected of being behind the latest bout of cyber attacks. But the Interpark hack seems to have been with a more materialistic goal in mind.
Right. I mean, what can you say about North Korea? It's very creative and ever-changing. I believe that according to the media report, that North Korea is behind, especially the Reconnaissance Bureau of the North Korean government behind this attack on the Interpark. And the attacker demanded 3 billion wons, about $3 million US dollars.
Right.
Not in hard currency or US dollars, but cyber money, Bitcoins, so that they can sidestep and avoid the trackdown process usually applied to the national government. So which enhanced our suspicion that North Korea's fingerprints everywhere.
These attacks are not limited to South Korea. We've heard the North using its elite cyber warriors to hack other countries or companies as well. What are their tactics and how do they operate?
We have to think about the functions of Bureau 121. This bureau is part of the general Bureau of the Reconnaissance of North Korean military. And then it was created in 1998. And it has about 1,800 specialists. The point which I want to underline is they are working around the world. They do not work only inside North Korea. So they can attack USA, the companies in USA government, and then Japanese government and Korean government. As I said before, these are the main targets of the North Korean cyber attack. And then even they infected the several thousands of the Korean mobile phones. So their strategy tactics are quite diverse, but behind all this kind of cyber attack conducted by North Korea, there is the General Bureau of the Reconnaissance, and within the bureau there is the especially one-to-one the bureau.
Right. Professor Shin raised a very important point, which is a source of difficulties for South Korea as a defender of this cyber attack originated from North Korea. Although a cyber attack is originated from North Korea and by North Korean agents, it poses a problem with regard to the law of engagement in international security because, as you pointed out, that these attackers are not usually inside North Korea, but they are roaming around, especially inside China. So in terms of going after the locus of the attack, it poses a law of engagement dilemma for South Korea to deal with, whether it's an attack responsible for China or for North Korea.
Plus, there are thousands of them.
It's very difficult to track down individual agents.
In the meantime, reports that raise questions about Kim Jong-un's leadership continue to emerge. Most recently, a high-ranking military official, supposedly a general, is said to have escaped the north. And there are claims that he fled with $40 million of Kim Jong-un's slush funds. Do we know anything more about this?
Well, last time I checked, there is no official confirmation by the Korean government about the money, but it seems like the general escaped with 2 family members of his. And defection like that is a clear indication that the pressure diplomacy waged by South Korea after North Korea continuously conducted missile and nuclear tests, generating some effect that because of the effect of the economic sanctions, especially in the final sector of North Korea, through unilateral and multilateral measures, North Korean government is quite desperate to maintain the usual amount of the remittances to support the regime's control of the core members of the government and the party and the armed forces. So the members are under increased pressure to meet the demand instructed by the central government, and when they envision that there's no way they could make the demand, then they instead choose to flee from the country.
Right. So seeing this string of escapes not only by workers but from people in the upper echelons of society, we can't help but wonder whether these are signs of extreme internal instability in North Korea.
Well, I think we have to wait a little bit more because, of course, we have several cases of deflection of the higher ranking officials, or even very recently, one of the mathematics genius teenager who wanted to get a political asylum at the Hong Kong Korean embassy. I think, well, certainly there must be some changes inside North Korea, but as we did in the 20 years ago when the Kim Il-sung passed away, we thought we could achieve the unification in a very near future. From this experience, we have to get some lessons. We don't have to be hurry to make a decision about the situation happening in North Korea, but we just have to wait and see. But definitely, say again, some changes are happening in North Korea. So what we can do right now is we just tightly monitor what's happening in North Korea, and then we have to strengthen our capacity in every aspect to take the initiatives in the negotiation and in the relationship with North Korea, I think.
Right. How many times we had the end of North Korea, right, since 1990s? We bought the same horses over and over again. And I agree with you that wise foreign policy is not putting all eggs in one possibility. You have to spread the probabilities. And because during the era of the Arios March, the food crisis in North Korea, toward the end of the 1990s, there was massive defectors from North Korea, but most of them actually returned to North Korea to provide food aid to their family members.
Pressure continues to pile up on Pyongyang from the outside world. Just a few days ago, Singapore said it would take North Korea off its list of visa waiver program countries. Do you think this would have any immediate impact on North Korea?
I think so. Singapore has been a very important strategic foothold for the elite members of North Korean government for personal safety and economic benefits, alongside with Malaysia, amongst the ASEAN countries. So it is part of the results generated from the all-out pressure diplomacy waged by Park Geun-hye administration to induce important change of behavior of North Korean government. So we have to wait and see. And Malta is also a very important target country because Malta has been importing laborers from North Korea. So the source of the trouble for North Korea with regard to these changes of attitude by Singapore and other countries is that strategic space has been shrinking for North Korean leadership to maintain basic foundation for the successful implementation of the Pyeongjin policy. Not only you develop nuclear weapons and missiles, but also you maintain basic economic development. But if this kind of changes continue to happen, then the probability of North Korea succeeding in accomplishing the simultaneous track of nuclear development and economic development will be further in trouble.
On a lighter note, ahead of us now is the 2016 Rio Olympics, bringing together some of the best athletes from all over the world. Spectators will be flocking to the Brazilian city, while viewers worldwide will be rooting for their home countries. But Rio 2016 is not without its share of problems and concerns.
The port city of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil will be bustling with activity during the month of August. With its opening ceremony on Saturday, Rio will officially kick off the 31st Summer Olympics that will be packed with 17 days of heated competition among the world's top athletes. Some 306 games will be held in 28 different sports with over 10,900 athletes from 206 countries competing. South Korea will compete in 24 different sports with a total of 204 athletes. Just 1 month ahead of the opening, President Park Geun-hye visited the national team's training center in Taeneung to show her support for the athletes and their coaching staff.
남미 지역이 완전히 또 반대편이고 그래서 적응하는데도 어려움이 있겠지만 이렇게 투지력이 강하기 때문에 잘 극복하리라 생각합니다.
The Rio Games have drawn much attention, being the first Olympics to be hosted in South America, but it also faces no shortage of concerns ranging from political unrest, security, the threat of terror attacks, and the Zika virus. Along with the world's top athletes competing for the top slot, eyes will also be on Brazil to see whether it will be able to successfully host the Games and reap the best benefits.
Korea's goal is, as we say, 10 for 10, at least 10 gold medals for a finish in the top 10 in medal rankings. How do you see our chances?
I think it's quite high because that elite sports, well, the Korean government and the Korean people has put huge priorities on the elite sports. So I think at the Rio Olympics, I think we could get the quite good outcomes.
What do you think, Dr.
Well,
Paul?
I'm hopeful and optimistic, but at the same time, I'd like to emphasize that are we all privy to the new system to count the ranking in terms of number of medals? In the past, you rank the countries by the number of gold medals.
Right.
Like in 1988, when South Korea was hosting Summer Olympic Games, South Korea made the most successful record as a number 5 in terms of number of gold medals. But now we have a new system. You total the number of medals, whether it's gold, silver, or bronze. So it'll be a very exciting time. And I checked the old record, and do you remember when was the first Olympic Games that Korean athlete won the gold medal?
Wasn't it the Berlin one?
Swiss.
Well, that's you're partially correct because Mr. Son Gi-jung won the marathon, but he did not, unfortunately, represent Korea,
true.
but Japan.
London Olympics.
What about the 1976 Montreal Olympic?
Yang
Komaneci
Jong-mo.
was the diva in the gymnastics, but Yang Jong-mo won the first gold medal for the Republic of Korea in wrestling.
Oh, Mr. Olympics here.
Right. I'm old enough to actually watch the great achievement in person.
What is of real concern, though, is whether Rio can successfully host the Games. There's been a slew of problems. I believe there still are a lot of problems. Some prominent members of the International International Olympic Committee have come out saying that the IOC in the future may shy away from cities that show signs of instability.
Yes, Brazil has many problems. First of all, they have the political crisis. The president impeachment has plunged Brazil into chaos. So political instability reached at the peak. And there is also the economic crisis. In 2010, when Brazil was chosen as the venue for the Olympics, at the time the economic situation was quite good. At the time, the economic growth rate was about 7%. But over the last 2 years, the shape of the Brazilian economy was destroyed. The unemployment rate reached about 11%, and the wages has plummeted. And also there is the health crisis. A major epidemic of Zika virus also has plunged Brazil into a chaos. Many famous the athletes did not want to participate in Olympics because of the Zika virus. And then even some famous basketball players, American basketball players, they want to stay in this big yacht, not in the official residence. Besides this one, there is the environmental crisis and legacy crisis. There are many problems, but the show must go on. The Olympic is going to start soon, so I want to keep fingers crossed to have a very successful and safe the Olympic.
Well, North Korea will be taking part in the games as well. We know that Vice Chairman of the Workers' Party Central Committee, Choi Ryong-hae, who's also in charge of the State Sports Guidance Commission, is in Brazil. What do you think Pyongyang wants to achieve at the Olympics?
I think it's not so much about gaining strategic benefits, but it's more about celebrating and supporting the achievements of its own athletes. Because under the leadership of Kim Jong-un, making North Korea as a great country by being successful sports nation has been the new model in place of the old goal initiated by his own father, emphasizing on celebrating North Korea's greatness with films and the mass games like Arirang and whatnot. The late Kim Jong-il actually studied the film when he was a student in East Germany. And he even kidnapped the famous South Korean director and the actress in order to improve the quality of the filmmaking industry in North Korea. So emphasizing greatness of the country with a victorious image of North Korean athletes in the international scenes has been a new instrument of the Kim Jong-un government.
We all know he's a huge sports fan.
Right, but he invited Dennis Rodman at least twice to Pyongyang. So it is a continuation of the same propaganda policy. We all remember that the top three North Korean political figures, Choi Ryong-hae, Hwang Byung-se, and Kim Yang-gon, all came to attend the closing ceremony of the Incheon Asian Games when North Korea made a huge advancement as a number 7 country in terms of medals. And many speculations were that all top 3 elites, political leaders of North Korea came to Seoul as a surprise visit in order to make under the table deal with the Park Geun-hye administration. But we know that the main purpose or main instruction by the Kim Jong-un himself is to celebrate and encourage the huge achievement of North Korean athletes in the Incheon Asian Games. I think Choi Ryong-hae being there as a central figure of North Korean government is driven by the same desire.
Well, for South Korea, the Olympics could be a good opportunity to further promote its pop culture. We know that Hallyu already has a strong presence in Brazil, but what more could be done?
Korean government has made efforts to introduce Korean culture and introduce Korean business history to the Brazilian people. In 2014, there was the Korea Brand and Entertainment 2014 was held very successfully. Actually, the contents of the program, the government conduct during the Olympic period is quite same to the 2014 event. There will be a concert with the participation of local stars, the Korean songs and Korean dances. And also there must be some the exhibitions or the advertisement about Korean culture and Korean business. I think these efforts seem to be very important because, as you know very well, Brazil is one of the largest economies in terms of the economic size and in terms of the geographical size. Brazil is very important, and then considering the potentiality, not only the Brazilian economy but also the Latin American economy, we have to make such a kind of efforts.
Plus, it'd be a great opportunity for us to promote the Pyeongchang Olympic Winter Games.
Definitely.
The Olympic Games will be coming to our backyard. Well, thank you two very much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
And that is all for this edition of News Inside. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with more next week.